The Automobile Association is pleased with President Cyril Ramaphosa's recent announcement regarding the Government of National Unity's intention to broaden the range of essential food products exempt from VAT. Now, the association will conduct a thorough assessment of regulated prices, such as the fuel price formula, to also pinpoint areas where costs can be decreased. To help us take this conversation further, we are joined by Layton Beard, who's from the Automobile Association and is their spokesperson. Layton, a pleasure to have you on the program this evening. Firstly, tell us, what are your initial thoughts when you heard President Cyril Ramaphosa's announcement regarding this review of the fuel price formula?
Good evening, Klankla. Thank you very much. Look, I think we're very happy that the announcement has been made at the highest level and at the opening of Parliament. And for us, that's a very significant development. We've been calling for a review of the fuel price structure since around 2019. And the fact that the President said that this was now going to happen is obviously incredibly encouraging. And we're very, very happy about that.
You say this is quite significant, but why is a review of the fuel price formula so important for South Africans?
Look, I think we need to appreciate two things. The first is that transport is one of those sectors that cuts across every other single sector in South Africa. It's important for the economy. It's important to retail, manufacturing, mining. People need to get to work, so they need transport. So the transport sector is basically, for us, it's the spine of the economy. It's really very, very important. And part of that, obviously, is how it is maintained, how it functions. And that speaks to the fuel price. So we're talking about petrol and obviously diesel. And every element of every sector that uses fuel is obviously going to be affected by fuel price increases and decreases. And we see that, for instance, in the agricultural sector. When fuel prices go up, we see that there's a price increase at the till. And that happens to many other different sectors as well. So the fuel price is extremely important. And what we've been saying is that, look, let's have a review of the fuel pricing structure. Let's determine whether all the elements that are on that fuel price are necessary, and B, whether they are calculated correctly. And then we can also interrogate whether there are elements within that fuel pricing structure which can be manipulated or changed or re-looked at in a way that can mitigate against rising fuel costs. And that really essentially is what we have been wanting to have happen.
But what specific changes would the AA like to see, especially in the fuel pricing structure?
Look, I think that's part of the thing that we want to have discussed by experts and by many other civil society organizations, including ours. One example we always give is, when we look at the fuel price taxes, we're looking at the general fuel levy and we're looking at the road accident fund levy. And together they contribute anything between, 6 Rand and 2 cents and 6 Rand 14 to every litre of fuel that you buy. And in the case of the RAF levy, it contributes 2 Rand and 18 cents to the fuel taxes. So we think that, because the RAF for us is a poorly managed institution, it requires a lot of intervention. We know that there are issues in terms of its financial reporting. We feel that 2 Rand 18, for instance, is a good place to start, and that there is wiggle room within that 2 Rand 18 that government can look at and say, well, are we getting value for money out of that 2 Rand 18 that consumers are paying? Do we need to invest money in other areas? And is that 2 Rand 18 something we can look at to take away from the fuel price in order to make it cheaper for consumers at the end of the day? So that's just one example. The fuel price is made up of several different elements. And what we are saying is let's interrogate each of those line items to determine, like I said earlier, whether they're calculated correctly and whether they're still necessary on the fuel price. And if that exercise determines that everything is correct on the fuel price, then I think at least South Africans will have the peace of mind knowing that this exercise was done on their behalf and that everything is correct and that they can have confidence that it's done properly.
Now, Layton, over recent months, motorists have had to dig deeper and deeper into their pockets for fuel. But speak to us about how these rising fuel prices have impacted everyday consumers in recent years.
Yeah, I mean, it's been incredible. And, when you see the price of fuel going up, you almost invariably see an increase to consumer prices at the tills. It's not necessarily the same when the fuel price comes down, because obviously retailers and farmers and the agricultural sector and the mining sector and the manufacturing sector, they're all going to wait to see if there's a downward trend, which we haven't seen for 3 months, certainly not in 2024. And the result of that is that a basket of goods that cost you 500 Rand a month ago might cost you 550 or 600 Rand today. And that really is a problem for many, many consumers, especially those who are living from paycheck to paycheck, or wage slip to wage slip, who are really trying to make every cent count. And when that increases by 50 Rand, you may have to find yourself in a situation where you simply can't afford the things that you had just a few months ago. And that begins to impact on children who may not get food all the time. It may impact on people who can't get to jobs on time. So the impacts are serious and enormous. And it's been a huge concern for the AA for a long time, which is exactly why, on behalf of consumers, we've said, let's have a look at the structure and determine whether there's anything we can do to deal better with the fuel price variances that we see on a month-by-month basis, because at the end of the day, we need a solution that is going to benefit consumers and all citizens of South Africa, not only motorists.
Layton, for the benefit of our viewers, can you elaborate a bit further on the two substantial taxes on fuel and also their roles?
So the general fuel levy is currently pegged at R3.94 a litre, R3.96 a litre. It's a little less, R3.84 in the price of diesel, and that is a broad-based tax. It's a very easy tax for government to collect, and it generates in the region of 95 to 100 billion Rand a year to the fiscus. It's the fourth largest tax that government collects, and that money that is generated for the fiscus can be used for any purpose. It doesn't have to be used for anything transport or road related, even though it's a fuel tax. It can be used to buy, books for schools or medicines for clinics. It can be used for whatever purpose government deems fit. The other tax is the road accident fund levy, and that's currently pegged at R2.18 a litre. And that really is a tax that is collected to compensate victims of road crashes in South Africa. And that raises another very big issue, and that is, why do we have so many road crashes in the first instance that people need to be compensated for? So we think that if you deal better with that element of it, then you're beginning to deal better with the necessity for a road accident fund in the first instance. Now, our view is that if you simply scrap the general fuel levy, which is the bigger of the two levies, it may be counterproductive. Because it's such a big tax that government collects, we are concerned that if it is simply scrapped, government will simply find another way to collect that amount of money, and that may result in higher taxes down the road on other things, or maybe even higher VAT. So we'd be very cautious about just scrapping that tax outright, but we do believe there is room for a little more investigation into the RAF levy, especially given that we don't think that people get value for money out of that, given the poor financial state of that institution.
Let's explore the last point that you make. Are there components of the fuel price formula that might be outdated or even unnecessary, according to the AA?
Well, look, I think that's part of the reason why we want this review. I think that there are elements on that that have legacy and that come a long way. But we'd prefer not to throw out those elements until we get a lot of other different organizations involved that can together as a collective review that fuel pricing structure and come up with a solution that they believe may mitigate against rising costs. It's a very difficult situation in terms of what is on there that can be taken off. It's not necessarily a case of, let's take elements off the fuel price structure. What we're saying is, let's review and determine whether there's a better way to calculate those in the interest of providing cheaper fuel to South Africans.
But Layton, as we wrap up, how can organizations like the AA then contribute to this fuel price review process?
Well, I mean, certainly we'll be part of that process by giving our input into it. The fact that we're not going line by line on an interview now doesn't mean that we haven't interrogated it ourselves. I think what we'd like to see is government actually initiating this review process in an open way, involving all role players, including the AA and academics and experts in the fuel industry, and getting those people together and hearing what they have to say. I think the issue that we've raised in terms of the RAF levy is one issue that we will put on the table. There are many other organizations that could perhaps have other elements of that fuel price that they would like to raise. But I think at the end of the day, it's a question of let's get a process off the ground so that we can at least begin to have this conversation in an open manner.
Thank you so much for your time, Layton Beard from the AA, shedding light on this crucial issue.